Morning, everybody. Get started. Welcome to everybody here at headquarters and everybody who's joining us online. And I bring greetings also on behalf of our board chair, Bruce Fryer, who very much wanted to be here, but is unfortunately home recovering from COVID this morning. We are excited to be together as always, and we look forward to hearing from our wonderful speaker who will be joining us in a minute. I want to thank the Undoing Racism Alliance for, as always, organizing this morning, and to Stefan for his work in bringing our speaker to us. Our Martin Luther King Day Jr. event is a great tradition at WJCS, where we gather and learn about the challenges we are facing as a society. Last year, we talked about health inequities, and in prior years, we have discussed school-to-prison pipeline and education, among other topics. As we begin 2024, it seems particularly appropriate that we focus on voting, the role played by courageous elected officials in our history. We'll be hearing from one in a moment. In 1956, Martin Luther King said, "May I stress the need for courageous, intelligent, and dedicated leadership, leaders of sound integrity, leaders not in love with publicity, but in love with justice, leaders not in love with money, but in love with humanity, leaders who can subject their particular egos to the greatness of the cause. A time like this demands great souls with pure hearts and ready hands, leaders who possess opinions and a will, tall leaders, sun-crowned, who live above the fog in a public duty and in private thinking. This is one of the great needs of the hour, but as we move forward as a nation, we will need dedicated, courageous, and intelligent leaders." These words are as true today as they were when Martin Luther King said them. We need courageous leaders, and we are incredibly lucky to be hearing from one from our history today. As we go forward for this year, let us make time to educate ourselves, but let us also act. Act to make sure we are informed and we are informing others. Act to make sure we exercise the right to vote that so many have risked their lives for, and act to make sure we urge others to do so. I welcome you to our event today, and this morning is dedicated one to education and learning, but let's make it a year of action. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Beth Thompson, one of the heads of our Undoing Racism Alliance, who will belong with the program.
Thank you, Seth, and thank you everybody for being here today. We're so delighted to continue this tradition of annual Dr. Martin Luther King commemoration events. I want to emphasize a quote you all know by heart, which is Dr. King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech, with the line, "Now I say to you today, my friends, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream." And today's theme is resilience. How do we keep going? How do we keep going through the difficulties of today and tomorrow toward our dream? So at a time when our nation is really fragmented by extremism and xenophobia for Black people, brown people, immigrant, Jewish and Muslim people, LGBTQ people, and across our politically polar camps, it's such a long list. We really want to encourage our communities to recognize the humanity of all people, to value the contributions of our diverse communities, and to cherish the right for all of us to live in peace. I want to share a quote from Audre Lorde. "It's not our differences that divide us, it's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences." So thank you again for being here for our annual meeting for Dr. King today. And I want to just share some of the highlights of what the Undoing Racism Alliance has been working on this year. We know that a lot of this happens behind the scenes, and people are like, well, what's happening? Does anything ever really move forward? So I think it's on our shoulders to make sure we share some of that with you. And even though you may not see it all, there's a lot of work that's been happening this year. So just a couple highlights for everybody's information, and you can always reach out to Stefan, Seth, me, to my co-chair, Dr. Jennifer Lewis, about what's going on and what we've been working on. So some of the highlights that are already happening this year is the launch of affinity groups in our agency. And we have affinity group for Black and African American folks, for Latino, Hispanic, Latinx people, for women, and for LGBTQ plus folks. And if somebody wants to start another affinity group, we're delighted for that. We want to talk to you about the training that we've been working on building this year, agency-wide trainings in multiple venues that we want all staff to participate in. That is very close to launching, and Stefan will talk about that more. In some of our subcommittees, we've been doing a lot of work on not just training people, not just talking to them, but how do we integrate skills into our daily life at WJCS? How do we help supervisors? How do we help training programs? How do we help teams really be able to have discussions about race and racism and DEI? And what do we do when problems come up? Those are areas that people in the agency have said to us, we really need to focus on. So with that said, and the other area I want to highlight is that we have focused efforts on including racial trauma into our trainings, both through the UR committee and also through the trauma informed care committees that have training initiatives developing now. So some of our goals so that's a little picture of what's been happening this year. And what I want to share with you too are our goals for 2024. So our goals of 2024 are to reduce microaggressions at WJCS. It's been an issue that's been pointed out to us in multiple surveys and conversations, and we don't take that lightly. We want to increase diversity in leadership. Some of that's been happening, but there's a lot of work to go still. Along with that are, work to improve hiring and retention at WJCS for people of color. And also we want to reduce barriers to participating in things like the URC committee. We want people to be able to participate, and that's not always easy with the tremendous amount of work we all take on in our regular jobs here. So that's a little peek into what's been happening. We will definitely be sharing more as the year unfolds, and I want to really thank and welcome all of you. And I'm going to pass the baton to Stefan.
Thank you, Beth. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here for this incredibly important day and event to commemorate and to honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and to carry that legacy forward, since that responsibility lies with all of us. So Beth took us through some of the behind the scenes work that we've been focused on with the Undoing Racism Committee. We've been busy and we're looking forward to 2024. So I just wanted to share a couple other DEI initiatives that are taking place in close partnership with the Undoing Racism Committee. So as Beth mentioned, we are preparing to roll out agency-wide DEI training, and we have entered into a partnership with the YWCA of Central Westchester and White Plains and their Center for Racial Equity. Dr. Jennifer Lewis will be a key leader in developing a training specifically for WJCS in the ways which we can most benefit, in the ways which are most important to us in our ongoing racial equity work. There will also be opportunities for our staff to become trainers of this new model. So if that's something that interests you, please do reach out to us. And the more details will be shared as we continue to build that training platform. In addition, we're going to continue to look at our policies, our procedures, and to ensure that everything we do is equity informed. On top of that, we know that DEI, that racial equity is a core piece of that. However, we have to ensure equity, inclusion, and stances against hate in all of its forms. And just as we have in the past responded to identity-based hate, for example, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, so will we now in this moment. And we know that this moment is one for anti-Semitism as well. So that will be integrated and continue to integrate into our DEI efforts. And then our new employee orientation, we are going to roll out an expanded model, the 2-day models, beginning next month. And a larger focus of that model will be an introduction to DEI, a panel with our affinity groups to learn more about some of the work that's been ongoing and some of the potential ahead, as well as updates and invitations to join the Undoing Racism Committee. So we have a lot to look forward to this year. We have a lot to be thankful for the work behind us and the work of everyone on the committee. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our honored speaker for today, Dr. John Knight, Jr. So Dr. John Knight, Jr. served as a state representative for Alabama's 77th House District for over 2 decades, from 1993 to 2018. He served on the Ways and Means General Fund, the Montgomery County Legislation Committee, and the Health Committee, where he was ranking minority member. He served in the administration of Alabama State University since 1976, retiring from his last position as Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer in 2014. A decorated Vietnam War veteran and champion of quality of life issues such as adequate health care, affordable housing, quality public education, and desegregation, Dr. Knight served as a member of the Montgomery County Commission, as well as many organizations' boards. He has been chairman of the Montgomery County Democratic Conference as well. Dr. Knight received a Bachelor of Science degree from ASU in 1974 and an honorary Doctor of Law degree from Alabama A&M University. Chairman Knight enjoys family life and is an avid golfer. I am also honored to call him my family member since I gained him as an official great uncle-in-law just over 3 years ago. Please join me in welcoming Dr. John Knight, Jr.
First of all, I'd like to express my appreciation to Stefan, to WJCS for the things that you're doing. I've learned quite a bit from Stefan in terms of the things that you're actually doing at this particular time, and very impressed with that. I would like to do a little something this morning, start off by just telling you a little something about myself. But before I do that, I'd like to say hello to all of my family members that happen to be in the area, and to Stefan and family, my niece and grandniece, and everybody that's in the area there that I've had the opportunity to know and to work with, and especially express the appreciation to you and your organization for what you're doing. Having been born here in Montgomery, Alabama, I'm the son of a sharecropper out of Barber County in Alabama. Having gone to a segregated high school, which was Booker T. Washington High School in Montgomery, Alabama, coming up during the civil rights movement, where everything was segregated. And I've had the opportunity to do much in the community. I see it a pleasure to be able to have this conversation. I don't think I give a speech this morning because of the network and things of that nature, but just have a conversation with you about some of the things that's taken place and some of the things that are taking place at the present time here in Alabama, but also express the appreciation to you for recognizing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the things that he has been able to do and was able to accomplish while he was here. I was a young person growing up here in Montgomery in high school during the time of the civil rights movement. We lived on a street called Hall Street, which is only about 5 blocks away from where Dr. Martin Luther King lived. I'll be the first to admit to you that during the course of the civil rights movement, during the course of the things that was taking place, I was young and didn't really know a lot about what was going on as it relates to Dr. King. I was a member of St. John's AME Church. That was a church where when the mass meeting was called to call off the boycott of the bus. At that particular time, I was probably about the age of 10, but I do recall that meeting taking place. There were so many things that took place during that particular time that I think is so obvious that's not in the history book. And a lot of it has been left out because so many people who were actually involved have not had the opportunity to tell their story about what took place during the civil rights movement. While in high school, I can recall, and I vividly recall being a senior in high school, when demonstrations took place in Montgomery, we would leave the school and march down to the Capitol with the organizations that were there trying to get people to come and to be a part of the civil rights movement. That at that particular time, I didn't have a complete understanding of exactly what we were doing, because so often, the things that would take place in Alabama as growing up there, you would just take it for granted. We had to go to separate fountains. For a long while as a kid, that's what you did because your parents said you better do that. We had to ride in the back of the bus because that's what you had to do. But when Dr. King came and we got to a situation where at high school level, we began to ask ourselves questions. And things can be better, things can be different. And many of us participated in the civil rights movement, not as leaders, but as participants. And I was one that happened to have been a participant, and other members of my family happened to have been a participant in the movie, not in the movement, but not as leaders. We joined because we felt it was the right thing to do. I can recall in 1963, I think it was, when we had to march down to the Capitol, and my parents didn't even know that I had left school to go down to the Capitol. So they were very upset because of that. But those were things that happened, that took place during that particular time in Montgomery, Alabama. But we are here today to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and to honor him for the things that he did. And as we today gather to reflect on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. during some difficult times of the civil rights movement, in face of all the adversity, Dr. King stood as a beacon of unwavering commitment to justice, equality, and transformative powers of nonviolence in Montgomery, Alabama. He was looked at as the leader, and he was the leader. I can recall Dr. King being in the streets of Montgomery, going door to door in many cases, talking to people. And he was just another person to many of us, encouraging people to be a part of the movement, to be a part of what's taking place in this nation, in this country. And I can recall Dr. King giving speeches, all the time telling us that we could do better, that we could do things different. And all of that just resonated with so many of us that's gone on to do so many different things in the neighborhood, in the community, and things of that nature. Dr. King, he just had a way about himself of making everybody feel welcome. He didn't brag about his education. He didn't go around bragging about having a PhD degree or anything of that nature. He talked about those things that were important. He talked about equal opportunities for all people. He talked about leadership. He talked about what leadership was all about and what it should be about in the neighborhood, in the community, and throughout this nation. At that particular time, there were many other people in the community, ministers, community leaders, and things of that nature that took part in the things that were taking place in Montgomery, Alabama. Dr. King was able to bring those individuals together. He was able to bring those together and tell them that we must work together for a better Montgomery, for a better Alabama. And he was doing it during the most difficult times that took place in history. He was doing it during a time when nobody would respect Blacks as equal. Nobody would respect us being able to ride anywhere we want on the bus and things of that nature. So it was important to us as young people to be a part of that movement, to be a part of what was taking place. And the other thing that he encouraged, and he encouraged it very strongly, was that it was a nonviolent movement. Now that didn't sit well with many of us because we felt like if somebody attacked you, if somebody do something to you, that you defend yourself. But Dr. King was very adamant about that if you couldn't adhere to nonviolence, then you couldn't be a part of the movement, that it was nonviolent and we would not be able to take matters into your own hand, to do things that you wanted to do. You had to be a part of the total picture of what the movement was all about. I can remember those things that were small at that time, but I know now and recognize how important that they were for people to understand what Dr. King was trying to say. He brought to Montgomery, Alabama, something that had never been brought to Montgomery, Alabama before. He brought an awakening to the things that we had suffered with, that we had done throughout the years, that we didn't have to do any longer, that we were equal to others, that we could stand up for our rights, we could fight for our rights. And he instilled in me, through his preaching, through his teaching, to do something, to make a difference in this community, to make a difference not only in this community, but in this nation that we live in today. So I think he made the same impression on many people. And I took it serious. I participated in the civil rights movement. I participated in many cases when members of my family was not aware that I was involved in some of the things that were taking place. I recall very vividly in Tuskegee, Alabama, where I was attending school. We spent more time attending rallies and things than going to classes, and that caused us many problems in terms of our educational process. I can remember when Sammy Young was killed, who was a civil rights activist, and we took time to protest that killing in Tuskegee. I happened to have an automobile at that time and was taking people to the march, taking them, and I got a ticket for driving a taxi without a license. That's how they were trying to discourage you from being participants in the movement. These are the type things that took place throughout Alabama, throughout Montgomery, and things of that nature. So I went on and participated in the civil rights movement and many activities that were taking place. And many of us that participated in the movement, if they ever got a chance, that's at the time that the war started, they would draft individuals. I happened to have been drafted. I was drafted into the United States Army. So I had to leave and go to basic training and on to Vietnam and spent a year in Vietnam. And coming back from Vietnam, I came back with a vision that I would come back and do everything I could to fight for what Dr. King stood for. So it was that kind of inspiration to me that got me started in the civil rights movement, got me started with trying to come back and make a difference in my own community. But even coming back after having been in Vietnam and having fight a war in Vietnam, I found that there were still so many things that needed to be changed. So I began to work. I began to go back to school and earn degrees, but at the same time, being able to work in the community and make a difference. And when the bus boycott was taking place, even before all of that, I can remember things that took place when it comes to Dr. King and the bus boycott, and the bus that all of us rode on for many years, that we had to be in the back of the bus, that Rosa Parks made a difference. And I got appointed to the Montgomery Housing Authority Board here in Montgomery. And Rosa Parks stayed in public housing. And the pictures that you see now were visitors that came to actually where Rosa Parks stayed in Montgomery. Here is where you see on the picture here this morning. That was where she lived during the bus boycott in public housing in Montgomery, which was called Cleveland Court. She grew up there and she was a strong activist in the community, but she was committed to nonviolence. So we took and we remodeled the project, which was called a project, remodeled it, but we kept Rosa Parks' apartment. But what you see now is the new Parks Place. It's named after Rosa Parks, which was Cleveland Court before it was Rosa Parks. And we have visitors that come all the time. But part of Dr. King's vision was also affordable housing. And that's one thing that I have taken up as a cause in Montgomery, trying to make certain that we have affordable housing, trying to make certain that we change the direction of that. That was one part of Dr. King's vision that he was never able to really fulfill. One thing that came missing, but one thing that he did preach, that everybody should have a decent place to live, a place to work, things of that nature. So we have tried to start a movement in Montgomery to make people recognize the difference and how important it is to have affordable housing and to invest in affordable housing and to make certain that they are no longer projects, because those are the things that cause so much difficulty in our society and our community if we're not able to make the transition, to make the transformation that must be made as it relates to affordable housing and many, many other things. And I may ramble a little bit this morning because I have tried to put together something that would give you some idea of how things were in the past, how they are now, and what we still need to do in the future. That's why I look forward to the opportunity to come and to visit with you at some point to see what's taking place in your particular area, but also to extend an invitation to you to come to Montgomery, to see the changes that have taken place and the changes that we are trying to still make in Montgomery, Alabama, and to bring your organizational skills and your courage, your knowledge here so that we can see the different things that you are doing and you can see what we are doing. We now invite you to come so that you can see EJI, which is an entity that's in Montgomery that talks about the number of hangings that took place across this country, and especially in Alabama, where you can see the things that have happened in Montgomery and out throughout Alabama and other places as well. And you can learn about the history of why we are where we are today. One thing that really concerns me more and more each and every day is as we come and we celebrate, we come and we talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it's only right that we celebrate. But I think Dr. King, as I would understand Dr. King, would want us to do more. I think Dr. King would want us to be as active as we possibly can and make it a difference. I think that somehow, because of the things that Dr. King has done, we have taken in many cases a complacent attitude toward how to do things, how to get things done, and what should be done in society today. And I think that we must, as a group, come together collectively and say that not only are we going to celebrate what has taken place with Dr. King, celebrate the contributions that he's made to this country, to this nation, but we're going to do something about making certain that we fulfill his dream. That we're going to fulfill his dream not by having an annual meeting, but we're going to fulfill his dream by every day trying to do those things that must be done to make this a better country for all of us to live. We're going to fulfill his dream by making certain that we are participating in our own communities, but not only our own communities, that we're going throughout this nation, advocating for peace, for justice, for equality, and to stand up for what's right. Right now, as I speak to you today, and I'm sure in your area as well, we're facing too much violence. Dr. King would turn over in his grave knowing the amount of violence that takes place in our society today. It is too much. We must come together collectively and do something about it. We must stand up for justice. We must stand up for equality. We must fight for those things that are right. It is not enough for us to say that, well, I've got mine, now you get yours. No, you didn't get yours by yourself. Somebody gave us an opportunity. Somebody sacrificed for us to have the opportunities that we have today. So we must sacrifice ourselves now to make a difference in our own communities. That's what I look forward to. That's the thing that I fight for each and every day, to let's come together collectively. We can talk about those things, our differences, and all of us are going to have differences. I can tell you right now, growing up in a family where we had differences in our own family, but I had a father that said that I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear what you think about ideas. The only thing that he said about it was, when I make the decision, that's the decision. But I want to say to you that we must come together even in our differences and try to make a difference in this community. We must come together so that we can fulfill Dr. King's dream. And I think he would really appreciate that. He would really appreciate us being able to do that. And it's unfortunate that I was not able to come there today and be in person to be able to say those things that I want to say to you, but I hope that this will fulfill a partial part of that goal and that mission, and that I will make it there so that we can strategize. We can talk about how we can collectively come together to be able to do so many things. Coming back to Alabama, we still have much work to be done in Alabama, but we have much work to be done on a national basis as well. And it will take all of us coming together collectively to do that, to pull people together, to let them know that we must do things. That's why I appreciate what you're doing at your organization, what I have learned from Stefan. And Stefan doesn't do a lot of talking, but he does a lot of listening. I have found that much about him in the times that I have been around him. But he will get things done, and he knows how to get things done. And I want him to instill that in our family at this time so that we can continue to carry out and fulfill many dreams that have not been fulfilled. But along with that, as we look at what's taking place in our society today, as we look at those things that Dr. King wanted to happen that have not happened, and as I mentioned, one thing that he talked about very often was affordable housing and communities of dignity, communities where people could collectively work together. Let's see if we can't make that a reality. Let's see if we can't make that a truth. There's too much division now being preached across this country. There's too much division across every continent in terms of individual things. But collectively, we've got to appreciate what we have, the things that we have, and the things that we can do to help others. But not only that, we must not only look out for ourselves, we must look out for generations yet to come. We must look out for our kids and our great kids. And we must look out to make certain that they have a better life than some of us had as we were growing up, not only in Alabama, but in many sections of this country. And I can remember Dr. King very vividly coming back to the South, saying that the only problems that we have are not just confined to the South, but there are problems in Chicago, there are problems in New York, there are problems all over that we must collectively come together and solve. So I challenge you today in this brief testimony and this brief opportunity that I have to say something to you, that let's come together. Let's use today as a catalyst that we will bring people together in Alabama, in Montgomery, and bring people together in New York. We will come together collectively and we will start our own movement to make a difference, to help people, to do things that are different, not necessarily get in our own little neighborhood and do nothing, but we will fulfill Dr. King's dream by getting out and being activists and standing up for what's right and helping people in every place and every single entity that we possibly can. If we do that, I think that we will see a big difference in this country. I think that if young people see us coming together collectively, we'll cut out some of the hate, we'll cut out some of the shootings, we'll cut out some of the division that we have, not only here in this country, but on an international level as well. It takes all of us working together collectively. We are all blessed to be able to even talk the way that we're talking this morning. I'm in Alabama, you're in New York. I never thought that we'd be able to communicate this way, but things have happened, things have changed. Let's take advantage of that. Let's take advantage of every single opportunity that's out there. But you have to give up your selfishness. You have to give up what is in it for me and what's in it for all of us. That's what the role must be. That's what we must fight and continue to fight, because I believe that Dr. King put it and he instilled in us to continue to fight. I don't think that he would appreciate us just celebrating and doing nothing. I don't think that he would appreciate us just going back to our castles and doing nothing. I don't think he'd appreciate us just being able to take vacations and go where we want to go, but coming back and doing nothing. I think if we really want to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we will get up. We'll get up and we will stand for what we think is right. We will fight for what we think is right, and we will defend what we think is right. So I encourage you in closing this morning to stand for what you feel is right. Stand for what you think the right thing to do in this nation, in this country, and in your own community. And let's come together collectively to make this a better country, make this a better world for all of us to live. So I thank you for the invitation this morning. I'll be very happy at whatever point I'm given to respond to questions. I'll be happy to try to respond to a few questions. Those things that I don't have an answer to, I'll be the first one to tell you I don't have an answer, but I'll get back to you, but I would like to be invited again to come and have an opportunity to really see you face to face so that we can talk and collectively decide how we can make a difference and bring our organizations, bring our entities, and bring our states together. And in closing, once again, I want to invite you to come to Montgomery, Alabama, the birthplace of the civil rights movement. Get a place to learn those things firsthand. Get a chance to see some of the buildings where the mass meetings were held. Get a chance to look at all of the things that's changed, but still some of the things that need to be done here in Montgomery. So thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak. And I look forward to the time that I can come in person and be able to greet and shake hands and be a part of what's going in your great city. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, John. Dr. Knight, your words are inspiring, and for sharing your story and the inspiration that came to you from Dr. Martin Luther King and the action you took. We hope that your words today, the inspiring words you shared, will motivate that same action, since, as you said, what needs to be done is that collective effort, and we have work to do. And that work is best done if we do that together. So would like to open up the opportunity for a few questions, both those of us joining online and those of us here in person. So if you have a question, please go ahead and raise your hand, and we're happy to pass the mic.
I have a question. Dr. Knight, I'm Beth. I spoke to you on the phone as well, and I'm so happy to get to see you in face to face at least. And we really look forward to inviting you in person soon. I want to know what kept you going all these years. Our theme today was resilience. How did you get through those ups and downs and the day-to-day work to continue this effort?
Well, I grew up in a family where there were always challenges. And, you know, Dr. King, I guess he was a real inspiration. And when I grew up as a kid, you know, it was all right. I went to Booker T. Washington High School. It was segregated. I didn't think much of it. I thought, you know, that's what we had to do. And my eyes were open, and I said, there's so many things that can be done. And the real answer to your question for me is when I was drafted into the military and served in infantry. I was actually in the war. And I made it back to this country. Many people that I served along with never made it back. I felt that I was saved for a reason. And that reason was to come back to Montgomery. Nowhere else but to come back to Montgomery. I've had opportunities to go to other places, but I felt like I was saved to come back to Montgomery and to continue and make a difference in Montgomery. And I've never forgotten that. That stands with me each and every day, because I left many soldiers behind, good people that were drafted, that had to serve in a war that they knew nothing about, but were serving their country. And I was blessed. I was one of the blessed. I served in a company where about half of the company never made it back. And I think I was saved and I was spared for a reason. And I have not shared that with many people.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your service through your whole life for the betterment of all of us. Other questions, folks here or online? Bill?
Morning, Dr. Knight. My question to you is, what would be your advice to people who want to see change but don't know where to start?
Say your question again, I'm sorry.
My question is, what would be your advice to those who would like to see change but don't know where to start?
I would say join organizations such as the organization there today. Determine what role you would like to play and try to get active in analyzing the total community. I think for young people now and people that have the opportunity, go back into your neighborhood, go back into your community. We got too many young people right now, and I can speak for Alabama, I can't speak for New York. We got young kids in high school that's 2 and 3 grades behind. We got kids that need help. We got kids raising kids. We've got to do more to instill the community and bring communities back together. There are so many kids that we're losing. They are good kids, but they need people that have made it. They need people that can help to come back and to be a part of that community. I think that Dr. King gave us so much that we were able to be successful. And there's nothing wrong with being successful. There's nothing wrong with moving out of one neighborhood, going to another. But at the same time, we can't just leave everybody behind. One thing that helped us years ago in the low income housing was everybody was together in affordable housing. I mean, you could wake up in the morning and you would see somebody going to teach school. You would see somebody going to work. Nowadays, in some of the low income housing, people wake up, they don't see anybody going to do anything. So kids have nothing to aspire to. So I say to you, let's get back into the neighborhood. Let's get back into our communities and be the role models for kids. There are plenty of kids, and I work with them each and every day. They go home and sometimes their parents are not there. So we have to find a way to have something for those kids to do in the afternoon, in the evenings. Years ago, the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Clubs, the Girl Scouts, you had so many different things that could occupy kids' minds and could keep them busy. I'm afraid that we're losing generation after generation of young people because so many of us have been so successful that we have forgotten about leaving some of these people behind and trying to help them. So I think that the more we go and we analyze our own communities, the more we get out there in the streets and see what's actually going on, then I think that would help. And I would encourage anybody to do that. Just start in your own neighborhood or go back to where you may have lived years ago and see what has happened and see how you can make a difference. Those are the type of things that I encourage. The other thing is pay attention to what's taking place on the national as well as international level and be involved in the decision-making process.
Thank you. We don't have people online. Anybody else here? Okay. So we're gonna, thank you so much, Dr. Knight. We're gonna transition to Phil Menzies.
Morning, everyone. Greetings. My name is Phil Menzies, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about affinity groups, what they are. Affinity groups are a resource group where people can share similar identities that represent a true safe space where you can come to voice issues, concerns, learn, gain feedback, and share experience without any fear of judgment or retaliation. For example, if you're experiencing microaggressions in the workplace, affinity groups will work with the UR committee to offer a proper follow-up along with tangible results towards reaching a resolution overall. Most importantly, the affinity groups provide a sense of belonging as well as VHS. And I don't mean the tapes. I mean feeling valued, heard, and supported.
Mm.
I too am a member of the Black Affinity Group, which is for everyone of the African diaspora. Dr. King stood on the principles of peace, love, justice, and compassion. And affinity groups represent those same principles. So for those in attendance and those tuning in virtually, I urge you to be the change you wish to see in the world and join an affinity group today. For additional resources, the UR committee has provided a resource list located at the back table in the rear of the conference room. And a digital version will also be emailed to those tuning in virtually as well. So in closing, thank you for attending today And let's each strive to honor the legacy of Dr. King by making our agency a better place, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. That concludes our program. Thank you again for being with us. Thank you to all our speakers. And once again, thank you, Dr. John Knight, for joining us today. So we know we have work to do ahead, and that work is best done together. And please grab a bagel on the way.